What's going on? We are in week 3 of our series, Roadside Assistance. And so to start off, I want you to think, has there ever been a time where you've broken a bone or maybe had something hurt where it didn't work? Maybe like on your body, like a hand, a foot, maybe your nose, I don't know. I know for me, there have been multiple times where I've broken my thumb and it would like stick sideways and my thumb wouldn't work. I had to wear a big brace and hold it in place. And then even sometimes it'll get stuck like this. I can't move it. Now, it's the same thing with the car, right? If say it was raining out and you had windshield wipers that wouldn't work, would you be able to see well? No. Or if you were in a car and a tire popped or it was flat, would it go anywhere? No. You need all parts of your body or of a car to work together for you to get from one place to another. And that's the same in our story today. And it's the same with the church, is that we need all different people working together to build the church. And so before we get into our story, I want to do a quick recap of what we learned. So here's some icons that you've seen before from other lessons. So let's look at them. So we had God's special people, the Israelites, and they were called since Abraham that they were God's chosen people. And then they went into slavery in Egypt. And then they had freedom through Moses. They followed a pillar of fire. God spoke through a burning bush. He led them through the Red Sea. Moses parted the Red Sea. And then there were several kings, some that were good like David and some that were not good. And throughout the whole trip, God has told them that he wants to be their God and bless them. But he also wants to be the only thing they worship. And did they always do that? No, they didn't. And sometimes they would follow, sometimes they wouldn't. God would always try to bring them back to only worshiping him alone. And so we saw this through prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Elijah. And they would say, hey, turn back, follow God. Don't follow other nations, don't follow other idols or other gods. Only follow God alone and worship him alone. And so did they listen to these people right now? No, they didn't. And they ended up getting conquered by other nations. And so God kept their promise though. God kept his promise, not their promise. God kept his promise. And he always does. But he did let Babylon destroy Israel. And so we listened to other stories during this captivity time. Like this one about Daniel and the fiery furnace. And the good news though is that God kept his promise. In 70 years were up. King Cyrus of Persia said those who wanted to go could go back to their home. And so, do you think most people did this? Do you think most people wanted to go back to their home? Actually, most people were comfortable with where they were, but there were some people who decided to go back. And so that is where we are going to pick up our story today. So here is our icon for today. And we are going to be in the book of Nehemiah. And so the story opens up with Nehemiah, and he was a cupbearer for the king of Persia. So his job was to bring food or wine or drink or whatever to the king. He was the cupbearer. And Nehemiah was in charge of making sure that the king's food and wine was good. Okay, he had to check it, make sure it was good before he gave it to him. And so it says that one of Nehemiah's brothers and some of these other men came and they were talking to Nehemiah. And these guys came from where they were from. Like they were the ones who returned back. Okay, they were in captivity and they decided to go back. And so Nehemiah's like, how is it? Is it good? Is it bad? And this is what he says in chapter 1, verse 3. He said, they said to me, things are not well for those who return to the province of Judah, where they were from. They are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem has been torn down and the gates have been destroyed by fire. Now, when Nehemiah hears this, do you think he was happy about it or really upset? He was really upset. He cried, he was weeping, he stopped eating, he fasted, and he prayed to God for several days. And do you think that this would be a big problem? An ancient city not having a wall, it would be a big problem because there's nothing to protect it. People could come and go and destroy him. And so this was a big deal. And Nehemiah, he is in the king's palace, which is hundreds of miles from this place. And so these people are like sitting ducks and there's nothing he can do about it. And why do you think he cared? Why do you think he wept and cried? because this was like his homeland. It's like the place that his ancestors, like his parents' parents were from. And he loved this place so much. It was like a part of him. And he cared about others too. And he wanted to do something about it. And so he is super upset. And but before we keep going, he wanted to do something about it. And God wants us to do something about the same situation too. Is that, do you know that God wants us to care about others? And he wants us to be people, even people far away. He wants for us to care about them. And God might want you to do something about it, just like what we're going to see in Nehemiah. So Nehemiah's job, he was a cupbearer. So he would bring food and drink to the king of Persia. And so one day, this is months later, Nehemiah is still upset about it. And so he ends up, like the king sees how upset he is. He's like, you don't look sick. You look deeply troubled. What's going on? And so Nehemiah tells him, he's like, well, thank you for asking, which is actually something that Nehemiah prayed about. And he said, look, there is this, the wall's been torn where I'm from, and the city is depleted, and it's a complete disgrace. And so he's like, well, what can I do to help? Which was also an answer of prayer. And Nehemiah says, well, could you let me go and fix it? And so the king and queen ask, well, how long do you think it'll take, and when will you be back? So he tells them, and the king says, okay, yeah, go do it. So he's like, maybe he was like fist bump, like, yes, or something, I don't know. But he ends up going, and the king gives him a letter to be able to transport and supplies to be able to go. And so on the way, he gets there, he was there for 3 days, and then he privately goes up at night to check out and see the damage that was done. So he's up there, and he sees it's pretty destroyed. So he comes back, and he gathers the leaders of Jerusalem. And he comes up with this plan, and he shares it with them. And then he also tells them about how God has been with Nehemiah. Ever since he talked to the king, he talks about, hey, the king let me do this, and the king has given me the ability to come, and he listens to us, and God is with us. He wants us to do this. And so the people are like, you know what? Yeah, I see God in this. Let's do it. And so if it was just Nehemiah rebuilding the wall, this would have taken forever. But people in the city, the people who have returned, and also others come around, and they start building. And then you see, like chapter 3 goes in detail about this person built this gate, and then this person built the wall from here to here, and this person built the wall from here to here, this person built the wall from here to here, and then these people, they built this other gate. And he goes on and on about that. And everyone did their part. And so the enemies, though, of Israel did not like this, and they did not like them rebuilding the wall. And so they would make fun of them. They would told them, oh, what you're doing, you'll never be able to do that. You'll never be able to finish. They try to mock them. They try to trick them into stopping. And then they even planned an attack. And Nehemiah, as a leader, moved some of these people from building to then protecting. And even the people who were building, half of them stood guard around the attacks while the others worked around the walls. Nehemiah says this in chapter 4, verse 14. Don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord who is great and glorious. And fight for your brothers, your sons, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Nehemiah reminds them that the Lord is with them and is helping them. And in 52 days, less than 2 months, they rebuilt and finished the wall. The job was impossible for Nehemiah to do alone. Remember, it was a whole wall. But everyone came together and helped build the walls and the gates until they were completed. And so everyone worked together and with God's help and finished the wall really fast. And so look what else he says in Nehemiah 6:16. When our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized this work had been done with the help of our God. And this is so cool. The work was completed quickly, and people watching could see that God helped them. And the enemy wants to stop us, but God wants us to help us work together. And so people that would see will look at us and will see, like, wow, only God could have provided and helped you guys with that. And so that's a lot in one lesson, but I want you guys to think about this. God wants us not to be loners, not to be by ourselves. He wants us to serve along other people, to help people with needs and problems. And then God wants us to ask him, Lord, how do you want me to help? This goes for me and you and everyone. how do you want me to help? There may be someone that you know that needs help, and God may be asking you, hey, how can I help them? What can I do to help? Or also, maybe you know someone who has a problem, and you're like, God, how can I help them with this problem? God brought Nehemiah, and Nehemiah needed all those people to do their part too in order for this to be successful. And they worked together to complete the project despite the enemies around them trying to stop them. So what about us? Are we working together with your family to help it be what God wants it to be? This could be the church, this could be your neighborhood, could be maybe friends that you know. And God wants you to be a part of his body working together. And so if you aren't a part of his body yet, he wants you to be. And the easiest way to be a part of these people working together is to accept Jesus. And we know that through the ABCs, to admit, believe, and call on God. Call on God. And so if you have questions about that, ask your parents. If you come to Grace Kids, ask your small group leader or the Grace Kid director. We would love to help you understand really what it means. So until then, we'll see you next time.